Beautiful. All right, everyone, welcome to Space 101 November edition. We are going to be talking all about analog environments. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Shawna Pandya. I am the life sciences team lead. I am licensed in Alberta. I do general practice and ER, as you may have heard myself and Mike talking about before we started the recording. All about the austere environments, love space medicine, love wilderness medicine. I do a lot of different things, but I think the commonality is um, what can we do to improve our capabilities, particularly when it comes to medicine in austere environments. So I developed VR technology for space in austere environments. I teach an operational space medicine course with Project Possum, which you'll hear a bunch about this lecture. And maybe I won't get too much into my into my background because I think we're going to talk about it throughout the course of this lecture. So just to give you a quick overview to my analog experience, again, you're going to hear about this a lot more in detail throughout the course of this lecture. So I was a crew physician on a 2018 tour at the Mars Desert Research Station, and that photo to the right you can see is either myself or my teammate on EVA, but it just seemed very much like real life Mario Kart. So I had to, that must be my teammate because I think I took that photo. I was a career physician on a 2019 underwater mission called the Neptune Aquanautic Mission. You'll hear about that. I was a commander. That should say 2020. My apologies. At the beginning of this year, pre-pandemic. Um, and then I've also been in altered gravity, resource limited water environments, and pandemic willing might be going to lunaris. But that's just a quick overview. I think we're going to spend some time covering all of this in detail. If you have questions, I'm undecided. So if you think it's relevant, feel free to break in through the chat or unmute yourselves. And then certainly I feel like we're going to have a very productive and vibrant discussion at the end because there's more than just me who's had analog experience here. Okay, so you've kind of heard a little bit about the environments that I've been in, and so here's a quick snapshot that we're going to talk about, everything from altered gravity to water and gravity offset environments. Tying this back to ASP, well, this is our mandate. If you're a member, you know that we're all about networking, funding, opportunities, research, technology development for any type of space professional. Tying that back to this presentation, I want you to know by the end of this what analog environments are, why they're valuable, and how they tie into our mandate. So let's get to it. So what is an analog environment anyways? Well, let's start with a question. What do the ESA caves analog, parabolic flight, a deployment in either the Arctic or Antarctica, and Aquarius reef base all have in common? Well, the answer are an example of an analog environment, which simply the commonality is they're an environment that replicates some aspect of the spaceflight environment. So I'm going to tell you about the environments that I've spent time in, but why do we care about them? Okay, so imagine that without any training that you wake up alone on Mars, Mark Watney style. How do you prioritize? How do you survive? How do you decide what your next step is? Well, ideally, you will have practiced for this type of environment or a lunar environment before you ever got there, because at the end of the day, space is trying to kill you. The spaceflight environment is very different from the Earth environment. We're dealing with altered gravity. So if you're on the International Space Station, this is microgravity. Or zero gravity. So it's very different. Every single one of us in on this webinar today, every 7 billion people on this planet have had the luxury of growing up and evolving in 1G. So when you take away the gravity, actually every bodily system from your bones to your cardiovascular system, to your immune system, to your central nervous system, to your muscles are affected. You're also dealing with an increased radiation environment, distance from Earth, isolation, confinement, lunar dust. And if you take away nothing from the summary of the spaceflight environment, it's that space is trying to kill you. At the same time, space is hard, space is expensive, and space is trying to kill us. So why analogs? Well, the first time you get to space is certainly not the first time you ever want to practice this procedure, a protocol, or a time testing out new equipment. So that's why we have believe, and that's why we practice analogs. So here is, I think this is Chris Hadfield in the neutral buoyancy lab at JSC. So he's in his EVA suit. You can see the ISS mock-up behind him, practicing different maneuvers so that the first time he does an EVA in space isn't the first time he's practicing that. So let's get to what we learned from various type of analogs. Let's start with altered gravity environments. So when we talk about altered gravity, it's easy to think about simply zero gravity, but that's not all there is to it. So let's start with zero gravity. How do we replicate zero G on Earth without ever going to space? Well, the answer, as most of you know, is parabolic flight. So for those of you who are unfamiliar to the concept, parabolic flight is exactly what it sounds like, simply in a plane. When we do this through the National Research Council in Canada, we're flying at about 17,000 feet, much lower than a commercial jet. And you're flying in a parabola. So you're really, if you see what my hand's doing, you're flying up and down, and you're accelerating upwards at a 2G load, and then you're falling at the same rate as the plane, and that gives you 20 to 30 seconds of microgravity at a time. So it's like if you're in a roller coaster or an elevator, and when you drop at the peak of the roller coaster or you start to go down an elevator, your stomach kind of lifts. It's a simulated. It's the same thing. You're weightless for a second. So there's other types of zero G environments that replicate zero G. So you can have drop towers, you can have clinostats, which are rotating bioreactors. And these allow us to replicate microgravity and what environment you'll choose depends on what you're trying to study. So in this particular image, what we've been doing over the past 5 years is testing the capabilities of the Final Frontier Design IVA or intravehicular activity suit. So this is Project Possum. Not everyone may be familiar. This is one of our sister organizations, stands for Polar Suborbital Science of the Upper Mesosphere. As you'll see through the slides, we do various testing that will kind of become apparent. So coming back to the